Okay, so it's 7 o'clock. We'll get started. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see everybody. Big group. I love it. So I call this Monday morning meditation the Do Nothing Project, because I'll unpack a little bit about what that's about, but it's really the kind of about the exploring the healing side of practice, the quietude, the rest side of practice. And the Monday mornings are special because it's about connecting my local space, which happens to be Costa Rica right now, Nasara and my community here, whom I've been meditating with for a bunch of years, with my virtual group, you guys out there, which is all the community in the rest of the world, in Canada and the US and in Europe. So this idea is that in this exact moment, we're all synchronized and practicing together. So you're actually sitting with a whole bunch of people that you can't see. So maybe if anyone, you guys mind if I turn around and you say hi for a second? That could be okay? Okay, I'll just do that. There you go. Say hi. Hi. Cool. So we'll see how this works. I call it the Do Nothing Project, and it's been a perfectly appropriate title because every week that I try to do it, the technology doesn't work, and it never ends up happening for the virtual people. So hopefully this one will work, fingers crossed. So does everybody have a meditation cushion? Everybody seated? If you need more padding, if you want to, and you're allowed to feel comfortable the way you sit, there's more props and things in the closet over here. So let's see. Let me talk for a second about the art of doing nothing. Such an important art to cultivate in this world of intense busyness where we're all cruising around at high speeds. Contemplative practices are a lot about exploring this art, you could say, which is an art. And there's a kind of ideal that's held out within you could say, within practice communities, within the world of meditation, that there's a kind of pure practice of doing nothing that's available to us. That's a very healing stance. And the pure practice of doing nothing is a kind of practice of, and it's an ideal. It's something we all kind of, you move towards in a practice. But the idea is it's a stance of being completely and totally available to life, where you're open to exactly what's going on, and in a state of real rest and ease, and not needing anything to be different in this moment. Like the sense of which you can be here, and from that place of openness, when you really don't need anything to be different, you can make true contact with what's going on. You can see people, you see the character in their faces, you're present for events as they're actually unfolding in real time, and not only present to your own ideas about how they should be going or your own concerns or worries. And that, from this understanding, all that stuff about the mind's ability to plan, to worry, to do all this stuff, it's all useful tools, but that the pure practice of doing nothing is a place where some of that gets to rest and we can actually really be in our lives in that moment. And we sit in meditation, you could say, so that we can move closer to that place. We practice doing that in the sit itself, and the more we practice doing it, the more that place becomes available to us in more and more circumstances. And from that place, what we find is our actions tend to be cleaner, more appropriate to the moment, there's more energy efficient. We find our connections, our relationships to things are just they're sort of subtly and sometimes very richly improved. It's like we're kind of creating a cleaner signal-to-noise ratio in our lives. So that's, like I said, that's kind of the ideal. Of course, the reality is when we sit down and just try to do nothing, we quickly run into why it's actually hard to do, which is that so much that's going on, so much of our habits are about trying to get away from what's going on in the present moment. So even when we sit in meditation, we sit down and we might say, okay, just sit and be aware. And some of us can do that and kind of stay in awareness and stay open. But for many of us, it's helpful to have a little anchor, something to kind of pay attention to. And that's cool. So we pay attention to the breath or to sounds or to the body. But even then, very quickly we find, oh, I'm kind of bored. I'm bored of this breath. You know, like, I'm going to jump over here and try this thing over here. So this sort of little restlessness comes in. We can't quite actually be with the breath as it is or the sounds or whatever we're choosing. We got to kind of jump to the next best thing. And then we're there for a little longer, and then it's like, yeah, you kind of start daydreaming because it's like, in some subtle way, yeah, I don't really want to be here. I want to go into my daydream. Or I want to start to go into planning. I got really important things to do today. And, I know I'm just sitting here. I know it's good for me, but I could get a head start doing my list, going through my list. And actually, I really was thinking that it would be a good time to think about that asshole in my life who I'm going to ruminate on for a little bit or whatever. So all the patterns kind of come up from underneath. And it's like this giant invisible whale. You're sitting there and you're fine and you're like Jonah. You're sitting in the center of the world, perfectly present. And then this like whale comes up, and you don't even realize the whale's come up and swallowed you, and then it starts to swim off over here, and you're ostensibly, if I open my eyes and look at it, I'm like, wow, you guys are really super in the present, meditating in the present, but really you're not really in the present. You're in the Bahamas, or maybe you're back at home, worrying about work, or who knows what it is. So this idea, especially on these Mondays, is let's explore doing nothing together. But let's explore it in this very understanding, sympathetic way. For folks who are here, we'll do it in a meditation practice. But if you're at home, you can do that. But you can also, my thought is like, let it truly be about just being. The only thing I would say is, can you stay aware with what's going on in your present moment? So if you want to just, if folks at home want to do a very light movement, or they want to maybe doodle or draw, as long as you're being present in the moment with what you're doing, we can call that a version of doing nothing. It's a version of being present and just letting yourself be. And that doodling, the movement, just like, we'll say, paying attention to the breath if you're sitting, those are all anchors that kind of give us a bit of a structure. Since the pure practice of just sitting and doing nothing is kind of almost, it's like a difficult one for all of us. So what I'll do is I'll guide a practice. And the practice is, it'll be pretty simple. I'll kind of set us up in a kind of open awareness practice of just resting and just being. And you can stay there if you want, and you can practice seeing if you can just sort of stay aware with that. Or I'll also give you the option of having an anchor, since an anchor is super helpful. And for a lot of us, it's just to be able to sit with the breath or sit with the feeling of the body. It kind of gives our mind something to do. So I'll give you that option. And the idea is to kind of find something that works for you. Not everything works for everyone. Some people find the breath actually makes them anxious, or some people find working with sounds, there's too much kind of a startle thing going on. So you kind of just find something that feels like, oh yeah, I'm going to hang out here, if that's what you want to use, an anchor. And then the idea is to see if you can just sit and chill in that, and can you stay with the direct experience of it. And when, in a very sneaky way, the whale comes up from underneath and swallows you whole and drifts you away, can you kind of do like one of those cartoon double takes and look down and notice what you've been taken away in? Because that's the insight side of meditation. We develop the peace, this quality of being able to be with more and more of experience, but we also develop insight. We start to see what takes us away, what our rackets are, what our routines are, what our regular patterns are, our go-tos. And that's really empowering. When you can start to see them come up and not be in them, then you start to develop more autonomy, more freedom. So, how's that sound? Okay, so I'll guide about a 30-minute practice. And then at the end, we'll have time for a little bit of a sharing and any questions or reports. And I find that part is really helpful. We often say at the Consciousness Explorers Club, which is the group I do back in Toronto, the community is the teacher. So the things that you have to share and report are so helpful to other people. So I really encourage you guys at the end of that, if you feel up to it, for a little bit of sharing or any kind of questions and answers. So let's do it. I'll do one bell to start and one to finish. okay. Welcome to the pure practice of doing nothing, where you're allowed to exist without having to prove yourself in any way. So let's start by taking a few nice deep breaths. As you breathe in, it's sort of like stretching up the spine, finding some alertness and composure in the way you're sitting. And then the downward motion is the exhale. And that's sort of like this little letting go, the little dropping down into the cushion, into the body. So notice if you're kind of sitting, quivering kind of above the cushion, like you got a pickle up your butt. Sometimes it's like, ugh. It's like, no, just totally relax. Let yourself land. Let your whole body be solid on the ground. So breathing in, finding that alertness, and then the exhales, the downward motion, the relaxing, wherever you are. So a lot of practices, they deliberately don't say much in terms of what to do, how to be when you're in the pure practice of doing nothing. They would just say, sit and be. Or just sit, practice your own perfection. And we can begin from that place by just, as you breathe out, seeing if you can find this quality of openness in your experience. So you can sometimes find it in relationship to sound. Sometimes we subtly brace against sound. So even my voice, you might be kind of a little bit bracing against it. But seeing instead if you can completely soften through the front. And it's like my voice is just a sound wave that's floating right through you. There's no resistance. And indeed the sounds around us from the jungle, the wind, maybe people moving, ambient sounds of traffic wherever you are at home. You're so open that all of that just passes through you. It's like you just absorb it and it kind of comes out the other side. So much so that if there were a loud noise, you'd be so open there wouldn't even be a startle response. You just sort of metabolize it on the fly. So what does it feel like to sit with total welcomingness? Not uptight about the sounds, but also allowing everything that you brought with you to the cushion today to be here. All the feelings, thoughts. It's like, oh yeah, that's all cool. It's all there. It's all allowed to kind of come and go. And you're in this larger open container of kind of acceptance. And how healing this is. Just to sit in community with yourself. So there's an option here to stay just here. To stay in the stance of just not doing anything, just open and aware and relaxed. Your attention just sort of spontaneously drawn here and there. But since for many of us this is a bit of an unfamiliar place, it helps to have an anchor. Something just to ground us a little bit, ground our attention. So I'll give you a few options of anchors. The idea is you can kind of check each one out for, 10 seconds, and then just choose one and then chill with that for the rest of the sit. The classic one is the breath, the feeling of the breath coming in the nostrils, where it's slightly cooler, moving into the belly, the little feeling the tautness in the belly. So any one part of that chain of sensations deciding to focus on, or the whole smooth, continuous length, the inhale and exhale, the rhythm of that. So that can be a really wonderful place to pay attention. But for some people, the breath is it's like kind of psychs them out. So other option is just the feeling of the body sitting, or the air on the skin. the touch of clothes on the skin, the warmth in the hands. The thing with meditation is you can pay attention to anything. It doesn't matter. It's all about how you pay attention, which is in this sort of friendly, curious way, open way. And there's other body options too. So you can choose a body option or you can choose sound. Just listening to the breeze or to the birds or to whatever, if that pulls you in. Some people like to have a mantra, kind of repeat something in their head. Others like to just sort of look at the back of the eyes or the ground in front of them. So I gave you a bunch of options there. Of course, the danger of giving options is now you're jumping around looking for the right one, the best one. They're all perfect once we commit to them. So just commit to a sensation or an anchor now if that's how you're going to work. Then the idea is to see if you can stay with that, present for each little bit of the sensation, noticing the softest part of it, and just appreciating the break to just do this one thing, seeing if you can stay with it. And I'll come back a little bit later with some more prompts. Okay, good. We're practicing the art of doing nothing, of existing, which you're all doing an excellent job at, but existing in a way that's completely allowing of what's happening. And we may be in a more of an open awareness practice where you're just sitting in an aware way, relaxed, sounds passing through, thoughts coming and going. Or you may be kind of intimately investigating a sensation, feeling into the softest part of sounds or the breath or sensation, the delicateness of sensations. The one main instruction is just to stay with the experience, with your direct experience. Notice when you drift off, what whale swallows you up, the softest, subtlest daydream that begins, or the mild obsessing about a sensation, a discomfort. And just being curious. Can you notice that and then come back to being present and aware with experience as it's unfolding, not losing yourself, practicing staying aware. Notice if the face is straining at all, softening the eyes and the throat, letting it be easy. Appreciating the simplicity of this opportunity, taking this deep break. Good. So we're giving ourselves this gift of just doing nothing. This really healing stance of sitting and being and allowing all things to be here. And as we do, it may be that the breath suddenly starts to slow down or not. We just start to feel a little bit more settled. And of course, there's sounds, the wind, the birds, the nuts falling on the roof. But just in the stance of so open that they just pass right through us, the sounds. They say in practice, breathing and knowing you're breathing, hearing and knowing you're hearing, always in this awareness, and the awareness itself grows. It's like all things rise and fall and dissolve in the awareness. Good. So we'll just finish up our sit, just a few minutes, do a little mini loving kindness practice. Kind of really nice to finish your practice up with a little hit of friendliness. So for this practice, we can maybe connect it to the natural world around us, wherever you are. Perfect timing, because we're about to get hit by a massive hurricane. See, the idea is that as you breathe in, you sort of smile and say thank you to yourself. Kind of the gratitude practice of breathing in, smiling, thank you. And it's like you're thinking about all the things you're grateful for. And we start with the natural world. So saying thank you, and it's thank you for the sound of the wind, for the birds, for this space, this location, wherever you are. Kind of breathing in your thanks. And it's like as you're breathing in, you're absorbing more of the air around you, the world around you. You breathe in your thanks, and then you breathe out your care. And then spontaneously we let different images of different people come into our mind's eyes. So people in our lives, friends and family, and their faces sort of flicker up for a moment. With each recognition, recognizing, breathing in your thanks, and breathing it into the heart, and breathing out your care. And it's a practice in interconnection and feeling ourselves connected to this larger network. So behind those people are other people, you know, your grandparents, your ancestors, old mentors and teachers, people you've worked with, people near and far, just letting them, just sort of spontaneously seeing who comes into the mind's eye, picturing them, breathing in your thanks, then sending your care back out through that network, breathing out your care. So this, we connect it to the breath. We have this intention of connecting to this larger network that includes nature, that includes ourselves. And sometimes I imagine as I breathe in, it's like I'm breathing in energy from that whole network, all those lines converging, breathing into the heart, and then breathing out my care back through that network, which expands through space and through time. So a very ambitious loving kindness practice we're doing here, cosmic. Breathing in your thanks, and breathing out your care. And you might want to just stay with one face, or you might want to move between them. Breathing in your thanks, and breathing out your care. Really nice to sit with you guys. Thanks, God, for the beech nuts, whatever those things were. What kind of nuts are they? Quack. Yeah. So I got about 15 minutes or so, 17 minutes. It's always nice to, some people after a sit just like to chill and that's it. I don't need to say anything. I'm just in this sort of that place. But it's also nice to kind of hear where people are at and it's an opportunity to sort of maybe share any insights or reports or ask a question about meditation if that's something you feel like doing. Yeah. So anybody? Anyone have anything to report or share, or any insights or challenges? I'm just curious, especially about how it seems like the simplest instruction in the world. Yeah, just stay present. Just stay aware. But it's amazing how tricky it can be, because there's so many ways in which we kind of drift off. And then we're like, am I being aware? But aren't I just being aware of the thing I'm drifting off in? But you're kind of half aware, but not really that aware. You know, it's like, it's not like there's pure, I'm just here super aware, and then I'm kind of lost, although we do have that contrast. It's more like I'm a little bit aware and a little bit half aware of this thing over here and a little bit not aware of what's going on over there kind of thing. It's where really most of us live a bunch of our lives. So anybody want to share anything about that experience, how hard it was to stay there, or what you noticed about that, or if it was easy to stay there, or what that was like? Yeah.
I found myself, when my thoughts would drift, I'd maybe do a little noting, and then sometimes I would, some kind of thought of contextualization in my life, how this would pattern or something like that came up, and I found myself wondering, there seemed like the potential for insight.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I wonder if you could say something like, those feel like two,
Yeah.
they were taking me to two different
Yes.
objective or whatever places.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll just summarize the question, maybe. Let me know if I got that right. No, it's a very common question. So the report was that you were kind of present with your experience, and then you found, as things were starting to get a bit still, that you would have an insight or about kind of about the present context, an idea about something that you're dealing with that seemed rich and potentially worth following. And whether that was okay to kind of go with that, or whether, but the instructions seem to be to come back to being in the present. So how do you work with that? Because now you're creating a kind of conflict. Do I stay here in the present, or do I go along with this idea? Is that a fair?
Sort of what can you say about the two
Yeah.
destinations?
Yeah.
Of those two paths?
Yeah, so and each is a kind of different destination, and it's true. So the first thing to say is that very, very normal that as we start to get still and settled, that ideas start to pop up. Good ideas, actually. That's where creativity comes from. A lot of its creativity comes a lot from stillness. You know, we get settled, and all of a sudden, we're no longer in the same track. And now all these other potential ideas that are on different tracks start to potentially emerge in our experience, which is why people get so many insights for problem solving while they're meditating or at sleep onset. And and it's true that following those ideas can be really productive and rich. It's a whole way of getting insight around things that we're working with. So in meditation, it's always about what is the instruction. The point of this practice in the instruction is can we just be with our direct experience and not need to follow off on these different trails? That we have 23 other hours of the day to be able to do that. So technically with this instruction, it was like, if that happened, it would be, okay, you notice that's happened, you're aware, and it's good insight to see that's there. And then you kind of like let that be there, and then we come back to whatever the object was or the general place of awareness. Only because to go into that place, we start to lose the awareness. We can kind of get lost inside the idea and working out the idea. Technically, if you could stay as perfectly panoramically aware of that idea, you could kind of stay with that as your meditation object. It's just a trickier territory, but it could happen. So what my teacher Shinzen says about creative ideas is that, they'll come back, that you kind of let them go and come back to whatever your main technique is, because that's where, after all, we're building up this capacity to be concentrated on what we want to pay attention to. We're building up our equanimity. We're building up our clarity. These skills build up every time. But he says, if it's a really great idea, then maybe once in a while you might want to stick with it for a few minutes, feel it out, maybe write it down here. The problem is when you open that doorway, when I used to do this, when I'd sit, I would have ideas all the time come up, usually about meditation in the mind, because that's what I was interested in. And I would write them down in my journal, and then I would, I spent very little time meditating. Mostly I was just writing about my ideas about meditation. And so at a certain point I was like, okay, it's time to relax on that front. So does that make sense as a response? So I guess it's a little bit around your intention. Set the intention at the beginning of the practice. I want to stay with this technique and really develop these skills. And if ideas come, and that's why it's often helpful at the beginning to kind of do an inventory of what distractions will be. I know myself, I know I'll have these ideas, or I know that I'll be wondering if I'm doing it right, or I'll know that I'm going to be ruminating about this particular person. You kind of prime ahead of time that could happen, and then you set your intention to stay with your direct experience and not follow those. Or you sit down with a meditation and say, I'm going to make this a creativity meditation. I'm going to just sit and be with my breath in general, but if interesting ideas come, I'll let myself pursue them because that's my intention for this sit. Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't there also a path of insight in meditation that's
Yes.
separate from creative ideas?
Oh, yeah.
Where you just you notice yourself in a pattern, you're like, oh, that's my pattern. I'm having an insight.
Yes.
So can you talk a little about
Yeah.
the difference between the path of insight and the path of doing nothing?
Great. Okay, so great question. Yes, so this is what's so interesting. So the question is about the difference between the creative ideas that you're having, and then which are insights of a kind, but then insights as they're referred to within the traditional path of insight, a path of mindfulness within a Buddhist practice. And that's a really interesting question. And what's really fascinating to me is actually they're very related. The experience of the eureka moment of having an insight or an idea is one that just goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. The surface of that is, oh, I had this creative idea, or oh, I noticed that I do this thing. It's like, wow, I never noticed that I did that thing before. I always am doing that thing. And so you get an insight within this context is an experience of truth. It's suddenly having a direct experience of some true thing that you did and noticing it. The light bulb goes off. Oh my gosh. And in that moment, you're a little bit more free, you're a little bit more awake, you're a little bit more aware. So those insights go deeper and deeper and deeper. And if they start out as like a creative idea or an insight into this pattern you get stuck in, this thing you do, it starts to become more fundamental, like this insight about who you are, how you are, this insight about what you are. So this is when you get into the deeper path of insight. It's like insights about, it's not just saying, oh, well, yeah, there's impermanence. Things are always changing. It's an insight about noticing moment to moment how your model, the reality, is getting updated and watching that happen. Or it's an insight about how that all this time you've been maintaining this kind of slight struggle to maintain this world out there and this you over here observing the world. But there's really only one fluid thing going on. And an insight into suddenly you suddenly get a shudder feel of that whole field for a second. And you're like, that's an insight. And now you're getting into the deep insights around self and mind and consciousness and world. And that's directly where the path of insight, the path of mindfulness leads. It leads over time into that, but it happens for people in different ways. So this is what's so interesting. So every time you're having an insight about your life, you're in that stream. It's this universal stream that we're all in. And that's what I find so kind of beautiful and wonderful. So if anyone had an insight before about anything? Yeah. Awesome. Welcome to the human family. Yeah. Yeah.
Question about that insight. My anchor was just the word open. I'm trying to maintain myself open. Having had coffee this morning, so I was already in my mind observing that. And there was this moment, so I was staying with my anchor, and then I would hear the pond and feel the breeze, and but there was this one moment where everything came together, and it wasn't sections of awareness where it was just all
Yeah.
in my field,
Yeah.
kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like that. But it's different for everybody. So you just described an experience, an insight experience where at first it was sort of like your awareness is compartmentalized, you know, you're paying attention to this thing over here or this there. But there can be a moment as we're learning to practice this letting go, which by the way is really hard. Because when we let go and get settled, all kinds of stuff can come up. Sometimes visitors that we're not really that into seeing right now. But as we practice this settling, this relaxing, it's like these sort of like weird, customized demarcations in our consciousness that have grown through our conditioning start to soften. And there can be these spontaneous experiences of suddenly feeling. I had one too when I was doing it. I'm feeling infinitely wide and large, where everything just suddenly, it's like things start to integrate, and it's not, you start to experience it, because it's not an intellectual. This is the thing. Insights, the intellectual part of it is the secondary part. That's the catch-up. The insight is a direct experience of knowing it and being in it, of something. It's like, oh, you have that direct experience. And then, of course, the mind jumps in and goes, I had an insight, and then tries to verbalize it and talk about it, and already we're a little bit further removed from it. It's like that. It was like the insight was the thing that we were in the stream, and it came down the stream, this giant, like, mushy pod of green vegetation, and suddenly it landed in us, and we were in this green vegetation world. It's like, I'm in the insight, and then it just kept going down the river, and then we're like, oh, I saw this green vegetation thing, but it's not the thing anymore. It's just the description of the thing. Yeah. That was awesome.
I feel like I'm asking the same question again, but in terms of the idea of distraction and insight, so for me, when I can feel I'm in distraction if I'm ruminating over a conversation I had yesterday,
Yeah.
and then I'm following that and making up things about it. And so for me, that's clearly a distraction that I want to bring myself back from. But the ones that I call insights, and I'm not sure if it's okay to go that way at all. If I'm sort of open for an answer to a question,
Yes.
I can't decide when that answer is going to come.
That's right.
And so if it comes when I'm sitting, am I in distraction, or is it
Yeah.
just, oh, here it is, and can I follow it? And then am I being distracted, or am I being open to a different kind of insight?
Yeah.
It's not so much a distraction.
Yeah, great question. Very similar to John's question. So I'll try to summarize it. Again, it's this thing about kind of trying to make a distinguish between distraction and insight. That for you, it's very clear when you're in pure distraction. Say you want to be kind of with yourself or with your breath here, but you're going off and you're ruminating about something back at home, and that's not what you necessarily want to be doing. And so we notice that. We say, oh yeah, that's what's happened. And we say, and in a good-natured way, we go, oh yeah, cool. I don't need to really feed that right now because I can do that 23 other hours of the day. And you go back to here. But sometimes we have an insight. And it's like you said, the way you describe it was you may have a kind of intention or a question you posed for yourself at the beginning of a practice. And you don't know when when that might arrive. And for you, it's sitting and being open, suddenly that might arrive. And then the question is, do I pursue that? Or do I go back to the breath? And it's the same answer I gave here. It's like, it depends on your intention around what you said at the beginning. First of all, it's a gift in any context. The insight is there, you have the experience of it, you're in it, and you're aware of it, and then maybe you go back to your breath. But if your intention is to really, you want to get some insight about a particular question, about something you're working on or thinking about, and you had that intention from the beginning, well then, there's grace. It just gave you something to work with, and of course you can go with that, because that's the nature of that practice. So I guess what I'm saying is, there are so many different kinds of practices, and they have to do with what our intention is, what we want in a practice. And I tend to be a bit maybe too loosey-goosey with this, because I just meet so many different kinds of people who want different things, and I want to help them find a practice that works for them in that moment. Other teachers would think that's a disaster as an approach. They'd just say, there's one technique, this is how you do it, always do this, and it makes it much simpler, but it can be a bit rigid, obviously. So this is why I'm giving that response. Yeah, but I think if you have a good insight and it's like something that you're in the stream of it, and it's what you want, you had an intention, you want to follow that, and follow that for a bit, But then don't start obsessively ruminating on it, because then you're just feeding that part of your experience, you know. Yeah. Okay, how about we do one more question? I'll be back on Friday and so you guys hopefully come back then, and of course next Monday back for my Posse International. But do you want to?
There's a bodily sensation that I was hoping you might be able to provide any insight on. But sometimes when I meditate, it seems like my awareness is concentrated, like maybe here or maybe like in a corner of the room, and my body sort of becomes disproportionate, or it
Oh, yeah.
feels like really like small, or I'm not aware of like a sensation in my limbs. And yeah, my awareness just like shifts a little bit, and it seems like, yeah, things are just indefinitely proportioned. I'm wondering if
Yes.
you've experienced anything similar, or anyone else, and if you might be able to speak on that.
Yeah, sure. I'll just repeat it quickly. So the report is that when you meditate, you have the experience of both kind of two different things. One is your experience of your body sort of starts to change. You feel yourself sometimes to be like narrower or wider. It's like you're getting distortions in body schema. So your sense of your body is kind of getting weird. And then also your awareness seems to be in different places along with that. That sometimes it's over there in a corner or something, or sometimes it's more collected over here or something. Is that a good? Okay, so yes, it's very common, these kinds of things. I had the same experience actually in this sit. I mean, what's common is that there are these shifts and wiggliness in the way we experience ourselves, that sometimes we might experience ourselves to be really, really big or really, really tiny or infinitely dense, and that it's like there's just this, it's a mark of beginning to get relaxed and beginning to get absorbed, that it's like the narrow structure of like, this is me and this is how I am, that you're walking around with, clank, 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 starts to get like, clink, like this part falls off over here, and it's like, and then this thing melts over here, and because there's just awareness. You know, you start to see more and more in practice that there's just this, awareness can be everywhere, and it's kind of infinite, and yet we kind of have it in this box through our conditioning. And as we start to practice, that box starts to dissolve a little bit. And so like it kind of blobs out over here, and we experience ourselves to be bigger or smaller, or we suddenly notice that our awareness is way over there, or it's right here, or it's more down, dropped in the body. And it's just, there's no pattern or rhyme or reason to it. It's more just a sign that you're beginning to get kind of, you know, to go a little bit deeper in the practice. And it's very natural. So the instruction is just to kind of notice that's happening. Oh yeah, kind of let it be there, and then just come back to whatever you were doing and not be too uptight about the fact that you're turning into a weird cosmic blob. High fives. Great, guys. Super fun hanging out with you. And hopefully come back Monday if you're around. We'll meditate again. And if you have anything you want to talk to me about privately or any questions, you're always welcome to do that. And ditto for my folks in the international world. You can send me an email if you have a question or a comment. Nice to practice with y'all. Awesome.
Friday morning too, right?
Oh, yeah.